my thoughts on marriage from both now being married and from watching, I mean, really multiple examples, mainly my parents growing up. I think I don't pay attention to my siblings' marriage for like marriage sake as much, but um, I really do think that it's a matter of effort. I don't. I believe there are such things as soulmates and people that we can like who God calls us to be with. And I also believe that we could make a relationship work with really anyone we want to if our heart's in the right place. Uh, so it was interesting hearing him speak about just like his views on it and his beliefs and like his observations. And there's not a lot that I would like really contend with or disagree with. Like even his views of marriage, he says that there's people like that marriage can be a very beautiful thing and a very good thing. And ultimately it's a legal standing. I take it one step further, and it is a legal standing, but not only like of this world. Like marriage is this spiritual bonding, and if like if it is informed biblically, it is like where two people become one. And that's said a lot in wedding. Oh, two people become one in partnership. But like that's literally the point of it. And so how I think about it, how Brie and I think about it, if you remember what Jacob and Ange read, we had Jacob and Ange do our ceremony together to exemplify that we believe it is man and woman together that best represents what God calls us to be.
Mhm.
We didn't want just a man up there or just a woman up there. We wanted a man and a woman up there to share in that for us because that's how we wanted to set ourselves up. Um, and so I really do think is this union and partnership that transcends um, what either one of us could be on our own, while at the same time giving us this obligation to persist and like push forward. Like the amount of times Brie and I like we're going through something, and I'm just like, if I was dating her, I'd probably break up with her. You
Yeah.
know, but we had to work through it because we were married, because that's what we agreed to do. And I'm sure she's had those thoughts about me before her before too.
Sure.
I don't think those are abnormal thoughts in marriage. I think what matters more is that in my heart, I still say, yes, but I committed to her for a reason and she's worth it. I committed to her because I didn't want to just break up with her because I felt like it one day. I saw something more in her that is greater than how my feelings fluctuate day to day, and I wanted to hold on to that. So it is really cool to kind of see his perspective of it, but I inherently think that if there's not some like spiritual informed part of marriage, then then it misses a lot of like then it really just is a legal standing, and there's benefits to that and there's like risks to that. But
Yeah.
truly I think that there is something more for our like spiritual beings than just a legal human made contract.
Yeah. And Revu pointed something out to me that I thought was interesting. Seeing a standard American wedding, we went to at least like one or two together, and then she went to one or two on her own. She just kind of said, like, in comparison to how they do it in India, it's almost like no wonder like people are getting divorced just from strictly looking at it like from the emphasis on the ceremony itself. Like you could whip up an American wedding in a day if you had to. You get a bunch of people in a room, you sit in a bunch of chairs, someone reads some vows, they say I do, they kiss, and then everyone has a big party. Indian wedding is like a week long.
Yeah.
Everyone you know and everyone they know, it gets invited. There's tons of money spent, so much time invested. It's really involved. And it's like you cannot do that multiple times in your life.
Yeah.
Like something like what our wedding is, depending on how you view it, and again, like what you're coming into it with. But just I thought that was like a unique concept because it's like, okay, yeah, like basically everyone's just like, all right, we ready? Is it time to party? Like that's
Yeah.
what everyone goes to weddings for, and it's not about this like big ceremony. I think like we've strayed away from that. But the other thing that I thought that I think I mainly sent the video to you and my other buddy was just some of the different ways that he talked about communicating in a marriage. And maybe for
Hmm.
someone like you who like does what you do for a living and just naturally is a good communicator, and I would like to think that like I'm on the right spectrum of like being intentional about communication, but I still have a long way to go. Was just that in and of itself. Like I feel like it might be common sense for us to do some of the things that he said. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to have like a difficult conversation, which is one
How
of
to
the
be
things he
vulnerable. Yeah.
emphasized. Be vulnerable, explain with the right context why you want to bring up what you want to bring up and what you want to change out of the conversation. Like have a real agenda for a
Yeah.
conversation, not just wait for a blow up to happen and then that's when you try to correct things.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, now that I'm at you, by the way, I hated that you did this too.
And you didn't put your shoes away about it more.
Yeah. Which is literally what I saw growing up. I saw
Yeah.
just like volatility
It's like a
constantly.
snowball.
Yes. And then it just like ultimately in my household became like everyone's always angry all the time and you never know like when something's going to happen. Um, but I mean, I understand why it's hard because there's been times where I've tried to like lead our marriage in being vulnerable in communication, and if Bria doesn't receive that well, or she rejects that, that shuts me down from wanting to do it in the future.
Mhm.
And so then I'm more guarded, and then she's more guarded, and then if she tries to open up to me and I take it wrong or I overreact to something because she's not communicating herself perfectly. Good girl. Okay, good job. Yes. We just got back from a walk slash run.
Slash run.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they did, but I assume it was a run
Hello,
based on
room.
this panting.
I watched a video about like when dogs come in and are like super heavily panting like that, it's not good to let them just like gorge water.
Yeah, she doesn't even if she wanted to. Like she just doesn't go to
Yeah.
water until like
I think that, and like I saw, because like when you can, I mean, we do it too. We burp, but I don't think dogs like burp like we do. So when you're consuming a lot of liquid and you're breathing in all that
yeah.
air, get like that bloatedness.
Yeah. And bloated stomachs actually for dogs can be like they could kill them.
Fatal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I saw a quick video about that, and I thought of
Well, and her breed in particular with mastiffs are prone to something where the stomach turns upside down.
that was exactly what I saw. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Just to
Yeah.
think, because like she, like when she starts like flipping around and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how just even like activity like we have to watch when she eats to when we like exercise her.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to wait. It should be like 40 minutes. She does pretty well. So we'll wait at least like half an hour, sometimes a little bit less if we
It's like again, that's like common sense. Like we don't eat a big meal and then go for a run. Why would
yeah.
they?
Yeah, and they don't think about, like that's the
Yeah,
thing. We have to be the prefrontal cortex for them to stop them from doing silly things because they don't have that ability.
yeah. It's like, do you want to evolve? Do you want to have
Yeah.
babies?
Yeah.
Let me help you.
Yeah. But thanks for taking yeah. But
Yeah.
look, this is Ruby's
What the?
it's a little ice pack.
Looks like you're choking her.
No, it's just a nice ice pack. It's
Does she
actually for
need
my
that?
migraines, but she wears it around her neck after her hot. She loves it, dude.
How do you know?
Just she never tries to take it off, and she always is like, "Yes, this is cool."
Okay. Okay.
And she usually hates stuff on her like head or neck. So,
Yeah.
um, but no, it's funny. Uh,
Yeah, me and Revu were talking about something yesterday, and like one of the things that she ended up pointing out was like when we do have conversations or one of us does bring something up, more so when she brings something up to me, I have a tendency to kind of get on the defensive
mhm,
instead of just like taking a moment to be like, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, I
yeah,
acknowledge that whether I think it's a big deal or not, you're still bringing it up for a reason, and that reason
mhm,
being that it bothered you and made you feel some type of way. So don't immediately just think that I need to jump into defense mode. And it kind of got me thinking about how, Like there's all those memes and stuff go like that go around about a girl will say like, "Oh, my head hurts," and a man just immediately is like, "Well, did you eat today? Did you drink
Yeah,
water? Have you
yeah.
spent 9 hours on your phone?" And it's like that's not what they want.
See,
They're not.
I think men get the bad rep for that, but I tell you what, if I'm just like, hey, I have a headache. If I'm around my mom, she does the same thing. If I'm around Bria, she does the same thing to me. When we care about people, we say it's a man thing because men like to problem solve, but women also like to take care of. So,
Yeah.
like, no matter who is around, both of us are saying, like, oh, well, did you do this? Did you do this?
Yeah.
Women are not inherently a better listener. I have experienced that. Like, people want to say that they are, but they're not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I was more or less just pointing out like that principle of like, hey, like sometimes people just want to like get a little bit of consolidating
Yeah,
and or is that a right is that the right word to say? Like you want to be
I think so.
consoled.
Yeah, I think that was right.
And
Consoling,
then like
consoling.
you don't always want to problem solve because deep down, like everyone knows the things more
Yeah,
often than not you'd like to think that they should be doing.
yeah.
Like, yes, my tummy hurts. But well, let's walk it back. Well, look what you had for breakfast. We drank last night and we didn't sleep. Like, okay, it's more or less just like it's a statement, not a here's the problem, what's the solution?
Yeah. It's like, well, did you drink water? Did you take this thing? All right. Yeah, Brie and I have had to get around that. Both of us do it. And I think a way we do that is just like, all right, yeah, I'm sorry that's happening. Do you need anything?
No, I'm
No, just
gonna
I'm just
say it.
saying it.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, let's save us both the headache of going back and forth.
Yeah. And that's honestly like what I feel like I would love to be because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe we're all biased. Like I try not to complain, but I probably do and I don't even realize it, you know?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot recently about how many times am I quick to like assume that I'm better at something than someone else, but I might just not be aware of it.
To totally I do you have a rant on that or
Nope.
I was gonna say I fully agree. Like I'm joining this new company and I'm watching all the call recordings and I'm joining calls and just trying to get my feet wet and understand like everything I can before I start being the one running the calls. And I'm
Hmm.
watching these calls back, and it's so easy to watch the calls and be like, oh, I would have said this here, I would have done this here, this is how I would have structured it. And maybe some of it's true, but in the grand scheme of things, you only have so much control of the interaction on a sales call, being that it's a sales call and it's the first time you're meeting with this person. So it's very easy, kind of like hindsight 2020, easy for me to just watch a recording from the
Yeah.
safety and comfort of my couch and be like, oh, I would have said this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what the backseat driver or the couch quarterbacks of
Passenger, princess, driver, whatever
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they call it, a passenger driver. Or,
Backseat driver.
yeah, backseat driver. Is that what you already said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a lap. Take a lap on your walking pad. Think
Speed it
about what you
up.
said. Speed it up. Think about what you've done. Let's get those moving.
Hopefully it's lubed up enough.
Hopefully, man. Nothing really worse than not enough lube.
Whether it's a treadmill
A
or your
nice poo.
chainsaw. Huh?
Is
A
that a
nice
nice
lube.
poo?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, like
uh,
I'm always lubed up in the back.
in the back. So yeah, I watched the Terrence Howard one. I feel like he said so much, but
Yeah.
there was only a few like major takeaways. And like the one I guess I would say that really stood out to me was just some of these concepts about the way the universe works that like I've heard about before with like the spiral. But I guess I didn't walk away from it thinking like, oh my God, like if we implemented these things, like what would life be like? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm how I think about it in terms of like what I could actually do or implement is I would love to try to understand frequencies and rebalancing our like health. Because I've seen a lot of times where like frequencies are used in multiple cultures for mental health
Yeah,
and
like
physical health.
chakras and stuff.
Yeah. And so like imagine if so, like, I don't know if everyone would like be more resonant to a specific frequency. And if you find that frequency, you're off balance. If we give you that frequency, because he's ultimately arguing that or asserting that um lights and frequencies pretty much light has a frequency, frequency becomes light, and vice versa, depending on where you're at. These are also representative of like molecules that we would experience in atoms and um elements is the word I'm looking for. And so, if you're out of balance, like chemically or whatever, I wonder if there's a way to like rebalance that just by either like meditation with like a specific frequency or even just like sitting in it. But I don't know. It almost seems like so aloof. And part of me also is like, yeah, but also I know just like go outside and sit in the sun and put your feet on grass is helpful.
Yeah, some of it was definitely, again, Joe said it best at one point, like halfway through, maybe three quarters of the way through. He's like, I wish I could more deeply understand what you're saying because he's speaking. I had
Yeah.
no clue. Like he's speaking very passionately and very intelligently about all this stuff. Like he has put time into that stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard for us just like coming off the couch. Like I'm like, oh, it's the guy that played like in the first Iron Man. What's he got to
Yeah.
say? And then before you know it, he's like, everything you know is wrong.
Yeah.
You're going against that.
Well, and at the end of the day, like I very much believe him. Like Bree and I were just talking about this the other week, which was very interesting. Like just like the timing of it,
Yeah.
because we were on a walk and talking, and I was like, we're talking about God and how I recently had this interaction where someone was like, "Hey, how is a rainbow created?" And someone was like, I think it's oil in the sky," and where it's like, no, and someone else is like, "Well, I think it has to do with light conditions," and I finally like jumped in. And I was like, I really see it as like it's very simple. God created the rainbow to be just as it is. We have like a basic understanding of like what allows it to be, but we don't really know exactly like why it bows or like why it comes in this area and not this area sometimes. And I can recreate with my hose, but it's always in a bow, you know? It's never just like shoot. And I was like, so at the end of the day, like in Genesis 7, I think it is, maybe 6. Um, God promises the rainbow to Noah as his promise to never destroy human civilization with a flood again. He says, that will be my covenant, like promise to you. When I see the bow in the sky, I will look upon it and remember. And that carried Bria and I into a conversation when I was like talking to her about that, pretty much saying how science is very fascinating, but science is the discovery of God and nothing more. Like I do not consider science a stay-in or a placeholder or a substitute for God. I think science is what we use to express what we understand about God and about the universe, but it's never enough. Like we never have the full, like E equals MC squared, except in this one situation. Like there's always an exception to the rules we know, which tells me we don't fully understand it because it's beyond understanding. And science is inherently pursuant to more and more discoveries. And so when science says this is it, you have to be skeptical of that because science has always changed as we've gathered more information. And inherently, we've always gathered more information.
Yeah, for sure. Like the things we knew 100 years ago are going to be completely different than what we know now. And then 100 years from now, we're going to look back at right now when we thought we knew so much and realize we didn't know anything. So I always kind of play that card where it's like we just have no clue what we don't know. And there's things that we can't even sense or measure, which is like one of the things he was talking about too, that
Mm-hmm.
we like just the interactions that plants have, for example, like we are quick to be like, oh, like plants don't have feelings, they don't think, but maybe it's just because they do it in such a way that we can't even comprehend or
Yeah,
measure.
well, yeah, and that's something that's always just annoyed me. Like, there's just such just arrogance around humans, which, like, I get it when you're technically the top species of a dominant like world. I guess there's some arrogance that comes with that, but people look at dogs and they're like, oh man, dogs are so silly or like just stupid. And I'm like, my dog is smarter than probably a third of the people I know I've encountered in my life, at least. Like she is her ability to like recognize my cues without me even having to like really talk. She does what I want her to do. She learns things quickly. She exerts her personality. She knows when to push boundaries, when not to. Like she expresses a high level of social intelligence, a high level of like hierarchical social intelligence, and then task training that is like beyond what most people are able to do. Like she's skilled in so many different ways innately, in ways that like a human being could not compare to. And somehow she's stupid because we don't understand exactly how she works. The average person doesn't,
The
which
saying
makes
like
no sense to me.
dumb dog probably just came from dumb human didn't train dumb dog.
Exactly. And that's what it is. If your dog is, and people say, oh, this is a dumb dog because it's not doing what I want it to do. It's like, okay, have you trained it to do what you want it to do? Have you
Yeah.
put in that effort? Because it takes a long time. A dog is not just like something to have around. If you want the dog to like behave well, you have to teach it. But dogs are super willing to learn generally.
Hmm.
And this is the same thing with nature. You know, we cut down trees and we abuse nature and we mine things, and it's like, oh well, it's just trees. And it's like, dude, look at their intricate root systems. Look at the way the leaves change to absorb sun in different, like they'll turn. The only reason you think things are dumber than you is because you're not paying attention to them. And that's sad. Like that is literally what leads to the downfall of humanity, because we extend that inherently, we extend that to other people as well. You know, other people are lesser than me because in reality, I'm just not paying attention to them.
Yeah, it's like my dad will bring up stuff sometimes, and like even the way you frame things sometimes, because like I'm still very much so in a place where I'm just staying curious. I don't fully resonate with the idea that like everything that it's in the Bible and God and everything is just the truth, but I also don't think that like there's nothing after this and that this was all like just complete random chance. Like I feel like it's somewhere in the middle as of now. Anyways, with that said, I always kind of play like everything seems so perfect because it wouldn't exist if it didn't find a way to be the way that it is. So I kind of look at it from that angle where it's like, yeah, like I would love to say that it's all like such a beautifully like built out articulate system and process and everything like matches off one another. But I feel like it only seems that way because it had to even get where it's at now. Like when things weren't the way that they are now in the planet, different like environmental factors drove certain animals to evolve the way they did and plants to intertwine with one another the way they did, and like animals learned how to use plants and plants learned how to use insects to help themselves. Like it's all like a very elaborate system that happened like over a very long time. Just kind of a thought that came to
Yeah.
mind after
No,
what.
I get it. And I think that stands with like our current scientific understanding of like the age of the earth as well as evolution. And I would say that like the majority of people would probably agree with you with that. And I understand that perspective a lot. And I wrestle with that myself. I really do. Of it's almost this paradox of like, well, things are great because this is where they're at. Like they found a balance. And things have only found a balance because they've had time to find a balance. And because they've had time to find a balance, they're great. And they're great because they found balance. And so it's like at some point,
Yeah.
it just keeps like cycling. And when you find like a loop like that or a paradox, whether it's in like a mindset or a thought loop or a behavioral loop or like a science loop or whatever it is, there always has to be something to either begin that loop or end that loop that acts on it from outside of that loop.
Yep.
And that's how I think about it. I do not believe science and God are in contrast. And I think that's one of the silliest things that really happened after we dropped the nuclear bombs. Like that's when our whole we became gods. And therefore, because we now can like create and take life, not create life, but take life. And ever since then, like this, there was this change where science became our religion, particularly in the West. Um, and they put that in contrast with God. The problem is, the more you actually look at it, the more it doesn't really check out. Like we just had the James Webb telescope that was launched, and it completely changed how we understand galaxies and the age and the Big Bang and all of that. And so it's like, okay, well that helped us understand how old our Earth was at one point. Um, and so to me, I don't see like if I read through Genesis and the creation of the Earth and like the history of that, that's not in contrast with what we know scientifically. I think, if anything, there's a lot that supports that, such as the Younger Dryas theory of this ice age that took out older civilization. We have archaeological evidence of like giants, which would have been like these creatures that are literally named in um, Genesis. That was Genesis 6. So Noah would have been like Genesis 7 or 8. In Genesis 6, the giants, which are a fallen like angel, that they are like the product of like these fallen angels and women that produce these like men of old, these great men. Um, and you think and you look in Genesis, and there's been renditions of civilization in there because there was the Garden of Eden. And just because it was created like that, that doesn't mean that mankind wasn't created outside of that. That means these were the first people that God like particularly set apart on a path.
Yeah.
And then they went in because, and the evidence for that is you look at the next story, Cain and Abel, and all these are the children of Adam and Eve. You know, Cain kills Abel, and God banishes him. And Cain says, "Oh, those other people will kill me if I go out because they'll know what I've done." And he said, "No, I'll put a mark on you. Anyone who kills Cain will be avenged sevenfold." And so it's like, well, who are these other people that Cain's talking about? So people take these biblical stories out of context and say, well, see, these are just fairy tales and they're one-offs. But in reality, particularly when you read between the lines, and I'm not saying add information in there, but you pay attention to the other details besides the main narrative, you see that there's been like renditions of civilizations in just Genesis that have told a history of the earth that is pretty consistent with how we like scientifically understand it. The only things that are in contrast are, did we evolve from monkeys? Meanwhile, Darwin himself has pretty much recanted that theory before he died. So evolution is evident in adaptation, like plants adapt, animals adapt to environments and over time. But that doesn't mean we evolved from monkeys. And I don't believe we evolved from monkeys. I believe men were created differently. And I think the evidence for that is that one, we still have monkeys. Two, yes, they're smart and they're intelligent, but they're not more smart or more intelligent than my dog. My dog also uses tools to get her needs. She also communicates with me to help her fill her needs. A chimp is not more intelligent than my dog. I think animals tend to be pretty intelligent, more intelligent than we think. I think we just overestimate our intelligence compared to animals. But there's something else about us, and that's what the Bible says, which is the breath of life. God breathed his spirit into us, which tells us that that is always inherently in us. And then God says, man will no longer live forever. His final age will be 120 years. He says that in Genesis after the fall of man, after generations. And then we get to more of like a modern age human being. And there are humans that can live upwards close to 120 years still, but
Mm.
we are in a society that like riddles our bodies with cancer and chemicals, and so we're not reaching the full capacity of that.
Yeah.
So in reality, I don't see anything in the Bible that is contradictory to like actual plausible scientific theories that are like currently even being evidenced or understood today. And that's kind of So I would say I'm also like in a way in the middle of what where you're at in this like middle ground, but the difference is I take my religion to inform the rest. I choose the side because only because when I look at science, it doesn't explain everything. When I look at Christianity, when I look at the Bible, it does explain everything. It answers everything. And
Yeah,
so to me, I'd rather
without
go with the all-inclusive one.
yeah, without the one overarching piece. I'm not saying science has this, but it's the like measurable, tangible, and which is like where faith was derived from, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I guess that would have to depend on what you say measurable. If you're thinking like, can I use a ruler? Well,
Just
no,
like
but
I
we can.
can't see God unless I'm already looking for him through a scope that that was God, not just random coincidence, like things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is this like aspect of faith, which I agree. But I think if you look at like other details, like for instance, if we can support that there's like archaeological evidence to support the Bible, and um, I'm not quite remembering the word for it right now, but if we can look at like the history of world events, weather-wise, cosmologically wise, you see a lot of evidence for the events in the Bible. Like even like the star that guided the wise men to Jesus, like there was I'm not like I haven't read up on it in a while, but it's like I think it was maybe Mars or Venus was close, and if you look at that like time frame of time, like it would have been there, like it would have been in the sky there.
Yeah.
So there's all these other, and we have like archaeological evidence as well as artifacts to support the not only crucifixion but also the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We have first-hand testimony of the of Jesus's like connection with God. We have first-hand testimony written down, and it's like, okay, yeah, well, these people said, okay, these are people who experience God, and then every single one of them went on to die for that cause. What lie would you believe enough to be murdered for it publicly in a usually horrific way?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm also thinking back like these are very like ancient people. Like what did
2,000 years ago really isn't that ancient.
yeah, but I mean like
This was Rome.
no, I know I'm saying I'm trying to think of like a modern day example. Like people still fall for cults. Like it's so
Yes, yes.
easy to
But are
be
you defending that
persuaded.
cult? Are you defending that cult against an opposition to the point where that opposition is going to publicly crucify you, behead you, burn you alive? Because that's what happened to the disciples of Jesus when they did not recount their story and they continued to push forward.
Yeah.
I know nobody who would die if I believe my truck is red and that becomes my life obsession. Meanwhile, it's green. If I go before the public court of the United States and they're like, Caleb, you have to say it's green because it's clearly green. We need you to say it's green or we're gonna put you to death. I'm gonna be like, all right, I really don't care about this that much. It's not green or it's green. You know?
Yeah. No,
I
I
mean,
know what
that's
you're saying.
obviously a silly example, but I'm trying to make a point with it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I can't help but immediately go to just like how different people viewed the world, their society, the pressures that they had. They didn't have a place to come and like hide away in their homes.
Well, that's really not true because it really was a modern world at that point. Like we didn't have air conditioning, but it was in Rome. That was one of the most well established societies that have ever existed. You know, like they expanded after from like the UK to Asia and down into Africa. They had homes, they had extensive governance, they had printed coins. They had like trade routes with Roman legions on them to give protection. Like it was a very, very modern society with just like we would see in the modern states. Like this rule, like we have a governor there. Um, and but ultimately like that place is like running itself. There's a governor, there's a mayor, There's maybe local officials.
Yeah.
But ultimately, each region has its thing. So it really, so people went to these other regions and were prosecuted for that against the odds. There's not many things that you could get me to go. Like, I'm not going to probably go to Russia carrying an American flag and being like, America's the best country. And then the Russian government is like, hey, man, what are you doing? I'm probably like, yeah, sorry. Okay. It's not worth my life for that.
Yeah.
You go, like, that's what they were doing. They were going in saying, your gods are false. Our evidence is we have eyewitness testimony, and these are his teachings. So I think that is some of like the best evidence you have for the deity of Christ, of Jesus Christ. Um, and then as far as God, the other point I want to make real quick is again, up if you look at society up until we dropped the bombs in the 40s, we forever have been a society that worshiped gods. Forever. Even in modern societies. The Romans had them, the Greeks had them, Jewish culture had theirs, Asian cultures had theirs. UK, Scottish had theirs, Germanic people had theirs. And ultimately, those were dwindled one by one by Christianity and not through the Crusades. The Crusades eventually happened, but it was not, it was through communication of discipleship. It was through, like, literally written in the New Testament after the Gospels of Christ come the letters of Paul. And these talk about going to Asia and going to Rome and going to like different areas of the world to pretty much preach this and create churches. Um, so I would say we are actually in the minority of it's been we have it's 2000 AD and society existed for before that for forever, like for since the beginning in some way, shape, or form. And we have extensive research or extensive evidence to support that every society believed in gods except since we dropped the atom bomb. That's when things changed for like the Western world. So to me, to discount literally lifetimes of cultures, Native Americans, Native Australians, UK heritage, Germanic heritage, Roman heritage, Greek, where the idea of gods exists is kind of silly to say like that in itself is not some proof of God. All of a sudden we know a little bit better. The Egyptians built the pyramids. They had some technology. We could not build the pyramids today like they did. So they were an advanced civilization that believed heavily in gods. So,
Yeah.
so to me, that's some evidence.
Yeah. You've obviously looked into this stuff extensively, man. The same points that we used to make when we were younger and like almost like laugh at are now the same points you're using like to defend the other side of the argument. So it's hard for me not having had the same like revelation that you have to
Yeah.
like contribute to this conversation in any meaningful way, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. No, I understand. And I'll kind of leave it at that. I'm not trying to like, beat your ear or anything about it.
Yeah.
It's just to me, I was kind of focusing on the words you said, but I think more than anything, what it shows is like you're on the fence, and that's okay. Like I'm not trying to convince you to believe. I'm just if you're saying, hey, there's no evidence, I'm going to say, well, there actually is evidence if you look into it, but just because there's evidence doesn't mean you want to believe or you have to believe. You know what I mean? So I got caught on that, and I think what you were really saying was, hey, I'm just unsure,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's okay to
all
be
I was
unsure.
saying is like if I go and look at something that can be like scientifically measured in the world today, I can see that, I can duplicate that. Like everyone that does the experiment can repeat that. I think that's like what science aims to do. And I'm not even defending science. I'm just
Yeah,
saying you can't then just at the same time like call upon God and be like, oh yeah, there he is. There's a measurement. Anyone else can do it. And like no, it's a no-brainer. He's right there. That's all I was saying. It's not as like
yeah,
in your face. There's a
okay,
completely different element to it. That's
yeah.
my
No, that makes sense. Um, that makes a lot of sense, and it's something I've struggled with like extensively. So I absolutely can relate to that.
yeah.
It makes sense that like that's kind of a perspective. I think it's a very common perspective, particularly with like intelligent people.
And that's not even like my number one thing that would cause me to say, like, to put me on the fence. That was whatever led up to me saying what I originally said was why I said that. I think that it's a whole nother massive conversation to try to get into, like, where I strayed, it, all that kind of stuff. Like, why do people not believe that kind of, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think ultimately, based on my experience, both like talking to people and my personal experience, I think at the end of the day, what I've seen a lot of people, and we don't, again, we don't have to like, I recognize the time, so we don't have to like get into this, but maybe just give me like, hey, yeah, that's kind of it, or maybe no, not really. And either way, it could be a interesting like future conversation to
Yeah,
get more into. But a lot of times I see that people have been scorned, pushed away, or hurt in some way by life, and it's been confusing. A lot of times, like people have used religion as a tool in that hurt or in that confusion, or like maybe have seen someone in their life who uses religion, but we're very aware of like the hypocrisy that they live in. And so that tends to turn us away from like religion ourselves. Is that kind of like something close to that for you?
um honestly, I don't fully understand what point you're trying to make. I missed what you're saying, like, and how it would relate to me ever having strayed growing up religious.
What I'm trying to say is a lot of times what I see is that people, including myself, this is like pretty much my testament, is life hurt me. I felt alone in it. I saw people use religion in my life hypocritically and abusively, and that turned me off from religion. And so I decided I wanted to figure out for myself. And ultimately, that led to me doing a lot of different things that eventually led me back to believe in Christianity.
I
But
see.
but that ultimately allowed me, when I came back to Christianity, to believe full heartedly because I tried a lot of different avenues on the way to that.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know anybody off the top of my head, but I feel like there's been so many people that are like very high intellects went on this journey to try to prove God wrong and then ended up being like, wow, I actually proved him right
Yeah,
so hard that I can't not believe now.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think that maybe one day in my life I'll come full circle, but I think that I'm still looking for maybe that peace or that undeniable thought in my head that I can't get over that just brings me full circle because I'm enjoying in a way the process of just like going from like here's what I thought to believe to be true, and then I kind of just explored like what does the rest of the world think, why are some people religious, why are some people not, why are there like 1,000 religions, and then at some point it just got like very hard to just be like, I think that's really where I'm at, like I just, it's hard for me to be like all in on this one specific take on why we're all here, how it came to be, what's
yeah.
next type of thing. That's where I'm at.
Well, if you're ever interested, I'm not just going to talk at you about it. Sorry for doing that a little bit earlier, but
No, dude, you're passionate about it. I would do the same if there was ever
yeah,
something you were like asking me about or bringing up against what I believe to be true in like a field that I'm passionate about or whatever. So it's all
yeah.
good.
And I'm not trying to do it in a way of like, well, you're wrong, and so you have to believe, because
Yeah,
I
no, I
don't.
know.
The whole, at the end of the day, the first thing that is evident in the Bible is that God created us with free will, and it is not my right to infringe on your free will. I will do my best to like talk to you if you want it, and like be your friend in one way or another. Like I love you no matter what, and it's not dependent upon like whether you believe in what I believe in. I would love that for you one day, because I think it always is like a helpful thing, but I wouldn't push you towards it, because that's not how it's meant to happen.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know?
Got to find it on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure,
But if
man.
ever you wanted to like just hear, because we have talked about all of that together a lot, so obviously I've come to like reason that this makes the most sense, including all that other stuff that I wonder about, and it doesn't prevent me from still being curious about the other stuff. I
Yeah,
don't think I'm a Christian and therefore I can't have a respect for other religions and like learn them.
right. I did this cool thing with Revu, and then maybe we can leave it at that because I got to hop for this meeting in
Okay.
5. We found this website. My phone's right here, but it's not important. It's called like procon.org.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's like if you ever just want to have like a debate topic, it'll give you the reasons why you should be pro and why you should be against.
That's cool.
And then like you just mutually agree on like which side you're going to take and try to defend that. I think you said you and Bria do it sometimes, like where you just do something simple, like something stupid, like I don't know, like, oh, I think we should drink out of glass, and someone else is like, no, we should definitely drink like out of the palm of our hands or something.
Yeah, it's
You
it's a
have to
fun thought experiment. Yeah.
exactly. But I was thinking like I don't even know what my go-to things are that are why I don't believe, if you want to call it that. So I think that that would be if I was ever going to have like a structured conversation, like me just coming in with no real understanding of where I'm at wouldn't do me any good. Almost in the same way, like someone comes to a therapy appointment and they're like, "So what brings you in today?" And they're like, "I don't know, I just feel bad." Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have a really hard time ever getting them to a point where they even understand like what they're trying to accomplish. So
Yeah. 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 No, man, I get it for sure. And at the end of the day, I think that's like the number one thing that prevents people from coming to faith is they don't find a reason that they like really
yeah,
need to.
and they don't even take the time to get there.
Yeah. It's like, what am I really missing? Like my life's okay. Like I'm happy with this. Like, why do I need God? Um, but yeah, man, I think if you ever want to have that conversation, just like even as like an intellectual thing, I would like love to do that just because it's interesting.
No, it'd be fun. It would definitely be
Um,
fun.
and if ever you are like seriously like posing to yourself of like, you know, is this a thing? You can always open your heart to God and just talk to him and be like, hey, if you're there, like, let me know and just see what happens.
Yeah,
If you want that proof, like you gotta ask for it. You know what I mean?
fair enough.
Yeah. All right, man. Enjoy your meeting. Have a good day. I'm glad we got the time.
Yeah, we also still need to doesn't have to be like every week, but we need to start trying to like get some other folks involved. I think that that would
Yeah.
really add
Let's
like a
plan on something for next week.
cool element to our conversation. Let me have some like actual intention this time and being like, hey dad, hey Uncle Mike, hey whoever, do you want to come on this? If so, what's your availability? And then we can get in a group chat and coordinate it.
Okay.
All
Sounds
right,
good,
you
man.
do the same, man. I'll
All
talk
right,
to you
man.
soon, buddy.
All
Talk.
right, man. Have a
Bye
good
bye.
one. Bye bye.